Board of Education Committee of the whole meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Manning. Policeman here. Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mrs. Jones.
Here.
Mrs. Campworth. Here. Mrs. Bressler.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any comments from the public? All right, presentation.
All right, so good evening, everyone. We have quite the agenda tonight. We're going to take you through the budget that we traditionally do before the board meeting. I thought it'd be a good idea to give it a week ahead of time, so Brittany will give that presentation. You can look at it throughout the week, and if you have any questions after the presentation, make sure you give us a call. And David is going to present three appendices and give us a different view of our budget from a different perspective. Ari, our architect from ARC, is going to wrap up with phase 2. So on next Tuesday, we're going to ask for a vote on the budget, and we're going to ask for a vote to proceed on phase 2. So we just want to give you enough time to see the process before we make those two very important decisions. Okay? All right, Brett, you're up.
Hi everyone. Tonight we're going to give you our 2017-2018 legal budget presentation. I think one of the most important pieces to take away from this is the significant reduction in our operating deficit for the year. It has always been and will always be one of District 228's main priorities to ensure that we are maintaining the components of for our students that they have deemed extremely important to their high school education. This includes all of our AP and honors courses, our electives, and our athletic teams. So I think you'll see that reflected really well in the budget tonight, that we have done a good job of maintaining that, as well as proving that we are still being financially responsible. So the first highlight that I'd like to talk about is Senate Bill 1. You know, there's been a lot in the news with this lately. We believe that $2.9 million additional revenue is a safe bet for our state aid funds, additional for FY18. There has not been any real numbers released. There's just been a preliminary number released by the state that is based off of what we got last year. So we've discussed with some people from the state, and we think that 2.9 additional is a good number to stick with, and we have included that in all of our budgeted revenues for the year. The other highlight that we'd like to point out is all of our title grant accounts. This year we have added a Title IV grant account, and we've added an additional around $1 million to each of our grants, or to our total grant funds for the year as well.
Title IV is a big grant under the Emergency Act, and so they're providing money to all school districts, no less than $30,000, including the three different areas. No more than 15% of that grant can be used for technology, but then they also a portion of it for social emotional learning supports, in addition to broadening academic areas. So they also include music, fine arts, which they didn't include under the grant before.
And is this extra $1 million over and above the 2.9?
So something I want to point out about Senate Bill 1, we probably won't see official numbers till the first of the year. The state superintendent reports by the time they understand that 550-page document. So we have some time on that. So they're funding it now off of the old numbers, but we'll adjust as we go along. The other piece that I have to caution you about is all the information we have is we received $2.9 million for the first year. Time will tell if legislation changes. I don't want us to think that we're going to be guaranteed 2.9 forever. The only guarantee is in the first year we'll have to monitor that and adjust as well, so aware of those things.
Our next budget highlight is with regards to our technology budget. We have purchased 240 new Apple televisions with Title I special ed grant accounts. We've also included 20 new projector installations. There were 5 new ones added to special ed conference rooms, and then we replaced 16 of them in district classrooms. The other thing that we wanted to include with this was our network switch upgrade. The total cost for this is $108,000, which with our E-rate reimbursement brings it down from $263,000. So this is the first time that we've been able to use an E-rate reimbursement for such a large capital project, basically. So that definitely is a savings to us. And then the final piece of that was an infrastructure upgrade. It increases the individual school's bandwidth from 300 megabytes to 1 gigabyte per school. So basically this means we can process more data at faster speed.
On the side, this is part of this presentation, but Jim Boswell started in July and had significant turnover in his staff while all this was going on, so that's a credit to Jim.
So that's for each school,
The infrastructure upgrade was for each school, yes.
in addition to what we already have.
Well, it's upgrading it. Right now, each
Okay,
school
it's
has
upgraded.
300.
It's replaced, the
Okay,
old stuff
replaced,
is bigger and better.
And Apple TVs, those are the complement of the iPads or like Apple TVs?
Yes.
So it gives students and teachers, again, as we're moving towards a more ebook, e-resource, students are reading on their iPad. At any point in time, a student can project their work right onto the platform by using the TV. You don't have to hook in. It just also allows the teacher to really move about the classroom.
Another piece that we wanted to include was a couple additional staff members to our student services personnel. We did add 2 additional guidance counselors and 2 additional social workers. And since salaries and benefits comprise the majority of the expenditure side of our budget, we thought it was necessary to include this as a budget highlight for 2018.
And this is a process that we've been working on over time, enhancing our student support services to deal with our students who are struggling. If they're struggling emotionally, we want to help them, make sure that that's not a reason why they're not thriving academically.
Is this the interns or is this
No,
the full-time?
these are our staff members. We still have the interns as well, so every year we're expanding.
Another piece that we included is the fine arts equipment budget. We have allocated $88,000 in this year's budget for numerous fine arts purchases, including new instruments, marching band uniforms, marching band equipment, and art equipment too. So this will help in the upgrading of many of our fine arts classrooms and allocates $88,000 towards the fine arts budget.
So this is in addition to the traditional repair budget that we had before. We're just going to make an investment to get the instruments out there. It's an ongoing process. We're just going to get that off the checklist.
Just all four students.
Yes.
And is that going to make more instruments to be available for students that want to do something?
That don't have correct.
And there were specific instruments that we didn't have in our catalog to begin with. So as different levels of students getting the opportunity, like for example, a vibraphone, we don't have one in our band. So the student that wants to play it, now they have access to that instrument, as well as upgrading some of the ones that are just beyond repair.
So is this a list that Anderson had before me?
No, this is a brand new. I sat down with every band director in the spring and kind of got a needs assessment from them, and that's what this is coming from, as well as the art teachers.
So one of our goals this year, we talked about this summer, was enhancing the fine arts. This is the financial commitment.
And the final budget highlight that we have for tonight is our additional athletic teams. We've added a District 228 lacrosse team that's going to be hosted at Hillcrest High School and boys volleyball at Bremen and Tinley Park High School. We've seen a great deal of student interest in these sports, so we're excited to be able to offer that to them. Lacrosse, we have allocated about $29,000 for startup fees and about $17,000 in annual fees that we'll see just between equipment, and coaches, officials, things of that nature.
The initial 29,000 will buy equipment for students who can't afford equipment, but want the opportunity to purchase it. Along with some lines of
So 29,000 started and then
17,000 annual.
So the 29 will come off of next year's budget.
how much was it for the volleyball? How much did the other was it?
I don't know what the exact dollar amount was.
35 for both programs somewhere.
14,000 maybe for the
coach's
coach.
salary, is that correct?
Yep.
Will they have booster programs as well? Like the other, some of the other groups do, volleyball, they have booster program, things like that, where they do fundraising to, help support some groups as well, or is that just a club?
I have not heard anything about the booster club, so I'm not sure if there will be
They have-
parents for
Like
it.
I
They
know
have the op-
softball has booster, will they have
Right, they have the
that?
opportunity to. Right.
To actually raise
So-
money to do so.
Correct. The boys volleyball was 29,000, including coaches for each school. So
29 per school.
29 per school with the addendum for coaches.
So you say 14,000.
29,000.
29,000 there and then you say 35.
35 per year, 29 per school. So close to $100,000 in additional sports for this one.
So the next piece that we'd like to bring to your attention is our budgeted revenues. This chart that you're looking at compares our budgeted fiscal year 18 numbers versus all of our actual 15, 16, and projected 17 numbers. We have not had our audit completed yet, so we have noted that this is a projected actual FY17. The auditors come next week, so the AFR has not been completed. These are the numbers that you would be looking at if you took them as is from the system tonight, as of June 30th, 2017. The other thing to note here is that our FY18 federal grants budget includes the 1.1 million in title grants that we've added additionally, as well as a $2 million federal subsidy from the QSCB bond interest that we receive every year. So that's why you see such a drastic jump from 17 to 18 in the federal grants account. And then if you notice also for general state aid, we have included the additional 2.9 money for general state aid. That's where we put it. So we have accounted for that as well. So you do see a significant increase between FY17 projected actuals and FY18 budgeted.
Going about 90 something, right?
These,
That's what I budget, right?
yeah, so the total revenues that you're looking at now for FY15 and 16 are what we actually received in revenue for those years. And then FY17 is just what we have right now. That number is subject to change after our audit is completed next year. So. And this pie chart basically just breaks it down for you so you can see that we are extremely heavily reliant on real estate taxes. That's very common throughout school districts in Illinois, and that makes up for 59.57% of our total revenues, and GSA would be our second biggest source, which comes in at 26%. So this kind of just gives you a visual aid to see how much of each category of revenue we receive. So. These are our budgeted expenses for FY18, also again versus our actuals for FY15, 16, and projected FY17. It's important to note that these expenses do not take into account our QSCD capital projects. So we will be allocating $30 million in our Fund 60 to cover the QSCD projects for the year, but we did not include this in FY18 so that we can keep it consistent so you can see it across the board year to year. So looking at it as is, we will be looking at around a 4.81% increase in expenditures for the year. But compared to last year, we're down 6%. I think this pie chart helps illustrate the fact that salaries and employee benefits make up the majority of our expenditure side of our budget. So this shows you exactly how much of each percent of our total expenditure each budget expense type accounts for. As you can see, salaries is at 53%, employee benefits at 12%. So this is the majority of what you're looking at. It does include the budget expense breakdown.
Can you go back to this slide? I have a question. For the increase, decrease versus prior year, I see between 2015 and 2016, it went from 87 million to 89 million, but it went down by 39%. How are we coming up with that percentage?
Not changed.
Okay.
We did have it originally with budgeted figures versus other budgeted figures. So originally we were going to show you the budgets. So it did go up, not down.
Okay.
When we had it as budgeted, it did go down.
So we can do the correct conversion.
This is a breakdown of our operating fund budgeted deficit versus prior years. Once again, the audit has not been completed for FY17, so we are hoping that we're accurate in our $1.7 million deficit for FY17. Again, the audit will determine whether or not that is accurate. But with FY18, we are projected to be down to $993,855 deficit. For the purposes of this slide, we have included the educational, operations and maintenance, transportation, IMRF, Social Security, and working cash funds. So these are our operating funds for the year. So this shows our operating deficit.
So, you talked about
We don't have the actual.
This
is what we're assuming.
1.7, but last year we approved the budget that we projected the deficit to
It's 2.9. And again, after the audit's complete next week, we should be able to confirm that, but that is what is looking like now. So just hold the fund balances for FY17. And finally, this is the breakdown of our estimated ending fund balances as compared to previous years. So we will be presenting a working cash abatement at the September 19th board meeting. With this, we are going to move $3.5 million from our working cash fund into our educational fund. This will help cover the deficit that we were anticipating in our educational fund. This has been a practice that we've done in previous years. So you do see a slight decrease in our working cash ending fund balance. You see an increase, however, in our operations and maintenance in our transportation fund. So this kind of just gives you a visual aid to see where we're at, where we're hoping to be at the end of fiscal year 18.
A 4-year drive in the ed fund.
Questions?
we do see an increase in our transportation fund balance. I believe we have about 1.7 million to be reimbursed in grant funds this year too, so that helps in that.
But it needs to look like a drop.
Very slight, very slight.
Very slow. So that is all I have. Casually.
Yeah, Rick. David, you ready to roll? Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to approach this. What let's see, let's go to Brittany's last slide. And then turn the page. And it's, the next 6 pages are basically the state form of the budget. So the board has to adopt the budget. And the state form itself is like 40 pages. So let's take 40 pages and make it 6. So all of these numbers are the exact same numbers which you find in the more lengthy and a little harder to review state form. So I'm just going to pass through that, and if you would just page all the way through everything that looks like it came from the Illinois State Board of Education and get to what is shown as Appendix 1. And I'll wait until everybody is able to page through about 40 pages. It's important you see the actual ISBD form, because that's what you'll be signing weekly today. So, they have tabs. We have tabs, okay. So we're going to go to appendix number 1. And the purpose of appendix number 1 is to be informative. The first page, which is titled Summary Chart Number 1, looks at what happened in 16-17. The next page is 17-18. All these numbers are the same as you just saw from Brittany. The next page, I would suggest you dog-ear this page. I think it's an important page because it focuses on your operating funds. Your debt service and your capital projects funds are what is termed non-operating. These are what you worry about year to year, maintain the educational programs that are separate from debt service and capital projects. And this provides you with a look at 14-15 compared to 15-16, compared to 16-17 budget, compared to 16-17 actual, and then puts the 17-18 budget in context. So this is just meant to be helpful so you can understand how these numbers compare over a 3-year time frame from the viewpoint of actuals and then the budget. And the next page, the rest of this I'm going to skip through pretty quickly because Brittany really had the good part of the presentation. All this is just a budget item. The next page is schedule number 2, which isolates your non-operating funds. The next page is all funds. So I hope this impresses upon you that we've gone through a lot of trouble to organize this information in a way that every number you're looking at, you should be able to look to our audited financial statements that are filed with the Illinois State Board of Education. You see the same thing. Taking care to make this an accurate picture of your financial recent history and then put the budget into context. Starting with schedule number 4, and the educational fund is, of course, your most important operating fund. So that's definitely worth your attention. Operations and maintenance fund next most important. And then the transportation fund and the IMRF fund, I'm going to just flip through these. IMRF fund, working cash, those are operating funds, but they kind of are what I term more self-sufficient. You take in money and they go out for a single purpose, such as transportation. Money comes in for transportation fund levy, and money from the state to fund transportation, and it goes out for that single purpose. Then the debt service fund is, that's it, debt service, paying on your long-term bond debt. Capital projects, that's what you're going to hear presentation from your architect tonight. I'm on schedule number 10, which is capital projects fund. Schedule number 10. And that does show that we're expecting $30 million of activity in 2017-18 and a balance of $16 million after the July 1 to June 30th time frame. So you'll still have some work that to be done even after this fiscal year is. And that's all for that.
The major fine arts buildings or
Yeah, the houses.
on this capital project fund, it doesn't include that?
Yes, it does.
It does.
And all of this is kind of somewhat speculative because these contracts are yet to be awarded and schedules yet to be determined with your prime and sub and your general contractor. So it's for budgeting purposes. Let's keep in mind that a budget is a plan. It's not a contract. And so we're presenting to you a plan. And we think it's feasible to complete $30 million worth of work if Terry does a lot of good coordinating with everything that's supposed to go on.
No pressure there.
No pressure. That was being facetious, my intention. No, Terry is part of a team. All right, so appendix number 2 as well. So I like to show the kind of material that you see in appendix number 1 because I like to see board members very familiar with their audits and with the way that your financial structure breaks out by individual funds, and that appendix number 1 is basically following that same type of analysis.
That's why I thought it would be appropriate to have it tonight, so there's a lot of information for you to get some time to look it over, and it'll be available next week, the rest of this week for phone calls.
Right, and it is reflected in the budget that you're going to adopt. So here we are at appendix number 2, and this is getting more, I'd say, just call this a work in progress, because I do indicate this is an initial draft. I think boards of education should have a grasp of a 5-year financial projection as a matter of the work of the finance committee and the board throughout the year. So, if you turn to the next page where it says at the top financial projection, 2011-12 through 21-22, you're looking 5 years into the future, and if you see where you have it, it's green.
Yes.
Okay, that's I guess if I could take that and turn that into a great big PowerPoint slide, that would be worthwhile because it's an important section. What that says, because revenues are on the left, expenditures are right. It's a little different format from the rest of the page. What this says is that your revenues over the past 5 years grew by 1.4% on the average per year, and your expenditures by 0.4%. That's historical from 11-12 to 15-16. Looking into the future, or rather from 16-17 to 21-22, the percent change is forecast to be 2.7% on revenues and 2.7% on expenditures. That's putting everything together. And this is all operating funds combined.
educational operations, maintenance work, gas, transportation, and park. So there's a lot, there's a lot being mashed together when you come up with that kind of a forecast. What this is saying is that over time, 16-17 is a $1.8 million deficit. The deficit is expected to go down with 17-18, go down further with 18-19. But based on a flat CPI of 2.0% and 2.9% growth on expenditures, again, business managers always want to overstate expenditures, understate revenues, and that's called being conservative. So this is a conservative financial projection which anticipates 2.9% growth on the expenditure side and about 1.75% average growth on the revenue side. And one of the main factors that causes this to be very flat is general state aid. We're not expecting, and the publicity about this $3 million boost, $2.9 million boost, it's not expected to be $3 million upwards and then continue to grow upwards. It's anticipated to be a $2.9 million boost and then flat. That's the best conservative view that I think is worthy of your review at this point.
Are these CPIs like actual for like 2018, 19, 1920? These are what they're going to be, or they're projected?
That's determined, that's projected. And
2.1 is,
right, 2.1 is actual in 18-19, but from 1920 on is forecast. I call this an initial financial projection because, Steve and I have only been here for a relatively short time frame. We're your interim guys, and I would say that during the course of this year, by the time we're done with our engagement, then I hope we can leave with some improvements to the financial projection and talk about it. But it's my belief that this type of forecasting, looking into the future, is a good idea to exercise. And if there's any factor that the administrative team or board members feel is out of whack in any way, something needs to be refined, improved upon. That's why this is an initial take. Look at improvements and looking at this as the most realistic perspective that we possibly can. Now, just to give you an insight into how the mechanics of a financial projection, it's really the educational fund that is very complicated. It's not hard to throw a number at your expected growth in transportation costs. It's the educational fund where you have so many different divisions and departments and specific programs, etc. So on the next 1, 2, 3 pages, this shows you the percentage factors that are going to apply to the different subcategories of the education. And generally speaking, we're just a tad over 2% on salaries. That includes cost containment from retirements. When people leave and they're making a lot of money, they get replaced by somebody who is relatively new. That's called savings from attrition. Benefits are a little bit more pessimistic. We get a 6.1% increase average per year in benefits. And then purchase services and supplies, purchase services 2.6, supplies 2.0 over all these years. Capital outlay a little bit higher at 3.7 because technology is very equipment and you should anticipate growth for technology. So, those are the types of factors that we can, I don't want to say play with, let's say we can study them. We can study each one of these factors and make changes in specific things. It's the pleasure of the board and the opinion of administrators collaboratively. So that's an insight into how a financial projection works. The next page is how the property tax extension limitation law works. If it were up to me, I subject board members to at least an hour-and-a-half lecture on the property tax extension limitation law. 2 hours.
Minimum.
You really, you know, as board members, and that comes with the tax levy. And I know some of you have been on the board for a long time, and you understand the tax cap to the nth degree of depth. But it is, you live and die by the CPI. That's one of my, you know, I'm a poet, I know it, I show it. You know, you live and die by the CPI. And so every year we track the CPI, give the board information about how it's developing. You know, one year we got a 4.1% CPI, everybody wanted to go shopping, everybody, and then, you know, then we get a 0.7% CPI as well. Now we're looking at the type of development. So CPI is extremely important. That's why that's an important factor or part of your financial projection. Educational fund and operations maintenance fund are broken out. In case you want to look at those more detail. So now I'd like to move on to Appendix 3, unless anybody wants me to go back and look at anything else. But I also can talk more about this a week from tonight if you feel like it. If you have a question that comes up during the week and you'd like some more information. Appendix number 3. I have a kind of a track record going back a lot of years because I've worked at J. Sterling Morton and Joliet Township High School and Lance Township High School. All three of those little districts are tax capped suburban College County high school districts. So over the years I've done comparisons of 48 high school districts in the suburban College County. So what I'm about to do is take you into that realm of comparison. So it's an interesting exercise. So I'm going to turn to this page where it says per capita tuition charge average within decile rank. What this does is take those 48 districts and break them into 10 groupings. If you're in the top 5, you're spending $24,790 per student. If you're in the bottom 5, you're spending $11,234. If anybody tells you that SB1 is going to equalize that, no, it's not. Okay, it'll help, but this is what you call a pretty large disparity between the wealthiest school districts and the school districts that have lesser funding per pupil. So the per capita tuition charge for Bremen Township High School District is $14,388, based on comparisons of these 48 high school districts' annual financial reports as filed with the Illinois State Board of Education by each school district independent auditor. So I think it's kind of an interesting perspective. You're in basically decile number 3. Going on to the next page, if you want to be curious about what school districts are spending more per pupil, so you have a family member that lives in the North Shore, you'd like to know how much their kid is getting in terms of high school education, you can look it up. Like, Maine Township High School is at $18,404 per student, significantly more money per student. There we go. And then I would term the outflow. That's the outflow of cash to spend money to benefit students. It's an expenditure. The next page is all about revenue and wealth per pupil. In this case, when you look at the tax base is EAV per pupil. That is a measure of local wealth. The tax rate is commonly referred to as local effort. When you combine the wealth and the effort, then you get the money. So here, Bremen is about $10,382 of operating funds, property taxes per pupil. So that's an understandable number considering what percentage of your budget is general state aid, because general state aid is a much larger number for school districts that have less in terms of per pupil local wealth. but you're in the decile number 2 as far as operating funds, property taxes per pupil. And then if you want to turn the page, you can see all the school districts that are stronger and have greater resources, and the school districts that are lesser and have less money behind every child in terms of dollars available from strictly the local property tax. There's nothing to do with money coming to the school district for general state aid or federal or federal programs. Strictly property taxes. Sure.
Just looking at that page, and you have Brennan highlighted, and then looking down below us, you see Lincoln Way. Great differences in dollars, but is it, if you look at the EAV column, is that what the story is?
Yeah, well, it's 2 columns. The EAV column D is 546 million. And the ADA students is 6,447 students. So you've got a lot of students. And $500 million of EAV.
So that would affect the tax rate?
Well, I'm sorry, that's per pupil. That's per pupil. But it's because you have so many students that the EAV is being divided into that number goes lower.
Well, isn't it also fair to say that the tax rate is reflective of the EAV? The EAV is higher, the rate can be lower?
Yes. Yeah, if you look at the one that always knocks my eyeballs on my head is Lake Forest. Their tax rate in column E is $1.19.9. That is a tremendously low rate. But they have $1.9 million behind every student. So, yeah, I'm sorry, that's not the EAV, it's the EAV per pupil. I was missing. I forgot, but I'm not looking at the original page. This is divided into pupils. But if you have $1.9 million per student, that's pretty gigantic. And that's why their tax rate is really, I would call it pretty minuscule. And another one that always knocks my eyes out is Homewood Law School. Their tax rate is $5.197. But they've only got $240,646 per pupil. But when you combine them, that's what you call a tremendous amount of local effort. Their tax rate is pretty high. But that's fine. I mean, that's their community's choice. They've chosen to tax themselves. If you apply that tax rate to the wealth at Lake Forest, you would have $50,000 of spending per kid. Anyway, that's the conclusion. Okay, so the next page, I decided, since I have been doing this for a lot of years, that I would look at this historically. And I looked in my spreadsheets, and I have data going all the way back to 2003, 2004. I'm sorry, scratch that, that's a typo. That's 0405. Sorry about that. So from 0405 all the way to FY12, it shows what's been happening at Bremen Township High School District. At one time, we were in the 58th percentile as far as spending per pupil. And currently you're in the 27th percentile. But all the time in your history, it looks a little bit, the story of how much money you have per pupil of inflow of property taxes per pupil, 18th percentile, 23rd percentile, 21st percentile, 27th percentile, 29th percentile, 31st percentile. Pretty flat as far as consistent with the past. So I think it's from my perspective, because I was a business manager at National Morton for 2 years. I'm familiar with how working cash is used to supplement the regular sources of operating revenue. And that's really what has been happening. And the gap between being consistently on the low end as far as property taxes per pupil and being able to spend more per pupil has been, well, you do have a history of having substantial deficits. But I think your past history of levying in working cash and abolishing working cash funding in the education fund is pretty much what I would call an ingrained practice for both Bremen Township High School 228 and Chase Wharton 201. It's just something that some schools extend.
I think this is also illustrative of the work that the school board has done, Dr. Kendall has done to close the gap on the deficits. I mean, to have that disparity between revenue and expenses is, obviously much larger deficits. And by the fact that these two numbers are getting closer together as compared here, that says if you close the gap and make the progress to minimize deficits.
So this is the kind of information that a person who likes to look at numbers gets into out of sheer enjoyment. And at this point, I've only got 3 more pages, and I've already taken about 3 times as much time as I thought I would. The next page shows you the data behind that chart, and the last 2 pages show all of the factors that I compared when I'm doing this type of analysis. The EAB per pupil, the tax rates. EAB per pupil, you're in the 13th percentile. Tax rates, you're in the 88th percentile. Combine the two, you're in the 17th percentile. And again, a percentile ranking is that 83% they have more money in that category. Your Q cash reserves in the education fund, 13th percentile, surplus or debts, I don't want to go into that right now. Per capita tuitions, 27th percentile. How much money you spend on direct instruction? You're looking strong in that, at 69th percentile. The percent spent for salaries and benefits, I keep an eye on that number because you want to have money left over for other things besides people. And then your bonded debt per pupil shows that you, for 15-16, you have plenty of capacity to go into debt as you did do. And then the last page is if you ever want to look at an individual school district, I'm just providing that sorted by district. And that ends my presentation of the appendices. And I think at this point, it's being provided the board with the idea that over the next week, go ahead and mull over this information and come up with questions that you'd like to have. A week from today, I think all I would be asking is that the board has additional questions. I don't think I'm not going to do that, that walkthrough of you just asking the board if there are any questions.
Hot information. Thank you. All right, we're gonna shift to construction now. And before I introduce Ari, there were a lot of people that told Ari, Terry, and myself that taking on 4 schools in one summer was not a good plan. They both assured me that it was a good plan, so I want to congratulate them on completing phase 1 on time and under budget. And if you've seen our fields, they're impressive, so I'm very proud of the work that they've done. With that, I'd like to introduce Ari for a wrap-up of phase 1 and what's next.
Thank you, Dr. Kendall. Good evening, everyone. My name's Ari. I'm with the RC Architects. I'll already know. I'll make it quick, but I can slow down and speed up at your pace.
He said he could do this for about 3 hours.
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. But the goal for tonight is to give you a summary on what we've achieved in phase one, what we're working on, setting goals for phase two, and step you through our design process. Our last meeting, we were in attendance, we had the pleasure to see that. I stepped through the subsurface and stormwater detection design. I'm not going to do that tonight. If there's any specific questions that you've seen now that we're open construction on site, again, I'll answer any questions that we're going to do from the ground up today. Otherwise, again, we're still here for a month from now. So, with that.
Okay. Let's see, you guys board up.
I'll step you through it. We are currently 60% in what we call a design development phase. There's 4 significant phases to our design process: programming, schematic design, design development, and finally the working drawings for construction. Design development, for the most part, is really closing out our discovery phase, trying to verify existing conditions, rehearsing our goals that we've set, and contemplating final designs. We hope our target is to release final construction documents for bidding early December. I'll touch upon what that means for our critical path at the end of the presentation. But we believe we are tracking very well to meet our target for phase 2, give us ample time for construction and address all the items that we will address with a very aggressive construction project. With that, quick summary. We set goals to implement the underground detention systems for each of our schools. Effectively what that is underground storage capacity, not only to address some of the stormwater management issues the district has faced for years past, but it creates a capacity for the underground detention for the building expansions. We're looking at something like 50,000 square feet per school. That's a substantial amount of building, roof, and water management that we've anticipated in phase 1 and implemented again that groundwork up to this point. I'm going to blast through all 4 schools. Bremen being first, we're at Bremen High School. This might look familiar to you. This is an overall map. North is up. That's important because I'm going to show you some pictures and some renderings of design work. You'll notice on 152nd Street, the north side of the building is in very close proximity to parking. This school district, much like every other school district, faces a master planning process as to what utilities we're facing versus what's the complexity, where we plan for a 50,000 square foot addition, and how to take the best advantage of the site's characteristics. With that, just get your bearings. You've got dense parking to the north. You've got close frontage proximity to Pulaski. That's where your main entry. That's where a good significant architectural design feature of the building is. It's not really conducive to 50,000 square feet. South is athletic fields. Southeast is your football field, as you know, and then you see that area to the north. Sorry for that. That area to the north of the football field really is a good landing spot for a building expansion. This is a drone footage of what the existing conditions were right before we started construction, and to give you an idea of what the stormwater management conditions were. This was the wettest spring and summer that we've had on record for many years to come. Very bad for construction, but very good to demonstrate just how bad the flooding issues were. This is considered a dry day. You can see that this is open surface puddling that isn't really common. It's a good example of how poor these sites drain. Let's see. Okay. This is that open area north of the football field. We did a quick analysis as to what utilities were in the area. In this case, although you can't see it, we had power, primary power in the building. We had a underground water, domestic water network that was a little ambiguous to us. It's been many years in the ground, very difficult to locate. order to build an area or what we call a building pad soil that would be suitable to support foundations for the building, we had to make sure that utilities were cleared from the area. It's very expensive to clear utilities in a construction phase, and it would otherwise be in the mass earthwork phase. That's what this year has been all about. There's so many barricades and fences and dirt piles. Okay, southeast, looking northwest. New football field. A lot of work has transpired here. Beneath your athletic field is your stormwater volume. That's your rock reservoir. That's what it's going to manage. That's what does manage virtually all of your site conditions. All the stormwater comes from Pulaski, heads due east, just north of the football field, and your outlet that introduces all your stormwater to the village side is in that area, the red dot. Spoils, dirt that's excavated during the rock reservoir process, where we pick out what's suitable for building construction. That's direct cost savings to the school district. If you can utilize soil that's good, export soil that's bad, very common school districts are good with bad soil. So you guys have your exposure to quite a bit of bad soil, I must say. I'll touch on that also. This area here, that's our building pad. There's somewhat of dramatic grade elevation differences at each of the campuses. That's due to when we plan for a 50,000 square foot building, we want to make sure that there's no significant level changes inside the building. It triggers ADA requirements that we want to pay careful attention to. Exit corridors serve hundreds of students. We want to make sure that it's constructed and connects to a suitable condition for building exits. So
Tuesday night, you're going to fencing and landscape. Fencing is for the softball field.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Okay, so I am blasting through this a little too quick. What I did not touch upon is the existing conditions at Bremen, where we have a south parking lot, which is this area here, that connects to Pulaski, which is remote from the north dense parking lot that I described earlier that connects to 172nd Street. 52nd? Those two conditions weren't ideal or suitable, considering once we built the building expansion of this building pad, it's kind of reflective of how big the expansion is going to be. We are cutting more into the real estate, adding more building, and in our opinion, creating a more harsh condition. So we wanted to tie the two parking lots together, correct some of the traffic functionality issues that we think you're having, improve parking in addition to the access to community buildings, and address some of these issues. And so with that, as you're building here, this path, this white path is now pedestrian access to the football field. We believe we have quite a few people coming out and off the athletic field. And this area here is dedicated to a new softball field that was removed for building the pad. That's your freshman softball athletic field. We will be constructing that for closeout procedures in phase one. Here's a close-up shot of the building pad. This really kind of sets the stage for items to come. You can see the density of parking and how close it touches to the building. This area here, specifically at Bremen, we faced challenges of having soil that were unsuitable. Unsuitable being about 1,500 PSF is really the values that we tested. We're looking for something in the 3,000 PSF range to support foundations. And so the district implemented a stabilization procedure for the soil here so that we would save dramatic cost to keep that soil on site, improve it, created a condition that's suitable for foundations without exporting.